Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today, we're talking about episode 102, The Morning After. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. After Niall's heart attack and the amorous display by Fran and Max, Maxwell is desperate for a way to slow things down with Fran. Instead of taking Niall's suggestion that he admit he loved her and marry her, Maxwell adopts Niall's other suggestion, devise a stupid ploy like redecorating a room to distract her and buy himself more time. Fran hires her cousin Sheila, the decorator from Forest Hills, to redecorate the kitchen. Upon Sheila's arrival, it becomes very clear that she and Fran live parallel lives, and Fran's is headed for disaster. Sheila's boyfriend Mitch broke up with her right after they got to second base, after being friends for 4 years first. Sheila's interior decorating skills are, shall we say, unusual. Fran does an about face after learning that Sheila's tastes nauseated Mitch and were the reason he broke up with her in the first place. Maxwell is very appreciative of Fran's efforts once the kitchen is finally redone. Meanwhile, Grandma Yetta received 2 engagement rings from her new fiance, Sammy. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
I do not.
All right, would you like to take us to scene 1?
Yes. So before I dive into scene one, I just want to check with you, Debbie, because it kind of goes all over the place. Did you count it up until the title sequence, or
I
did you
did.
divide it up? Okay, that's what I did as well. But unlike our usual kind of first scene, we do go a little bit all over the place.
We
So to
do.
start out in this episode, they do a recap of the end of season 4, again, kind of showing that hospital scene where we find out that Fran and Maxwell made it to second base.
Mm-hmm.
And Niall sent Cece over there to scar her. But anyway, so we
Yep.
get that little recap to start with. And then we go up into Niall's bedroom. I'm assuming it's
Mm-hmm.
room. There's
Yep.
he's on an exercise bike and Maxwell is there. And he's kind of telling him, you know, if I don't tell anyone
If I don't
sooner.
talk to someone soon, I'll get an ulcer.
Exactly. And Niles is like, "Yes, and God knows your health is should be what's foremost on our minds." As a side note, I do appreciate that they didn't just totally forget that Niles had a heart attack at the end of season 4. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually part of the plot here. Um, but anyway, Maxwell continues and, says how he lost control. He became like a wild animal. My
Mm-hmm.
God, I practically ravished her. And then we suddenly cut to downstairs in the living room where Fran is talking with Val on the couch. And she's like, Val, he was so gentle. He was like a little lamb. So
Mm-hmm.
again, that classic kind of juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
We jump back to Maxwell talking with Niles. He's saying how he was so intoxicated, his head was reeling. And we go back to Fran, who's telling Val, he sat on a Demerol needle and he didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
And Val's like, then what happened? And Fran says, we got to second base. And Val's like, oh, Fran, I only hope that happens to me someday. And we cut back, and Niles is saying to Maxwell, oh, sir, I only hope that happens to me someday. And Maxwell's like, I'll tell you, Niles, if Cece hadn't walked in when she did, I don't know what would have happened. How do you stop yourself when you're about to make love to a beautiful woman? And Niles is like, well, usually I wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And Maxwell's like, I'm just afraid Miss Fine I might have left her with the impression that things were moving a little faster than they really are. What am I supposed to do? And Niles is like, well, you could admit that you love the woman and marry her, or you could invent some stupid ploy like redecorating a room to distract her and buy yourself more time. Maxwell's like, good, that's good. Let's do that one.
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah. And then as soon as Maxwell leaves, Niles kind of takes a Reese's out of his shirt, kind of like he's hidden it away because he's not supposed to have it, in light of his heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Side note, Niles, why? Why would you plant that idea in his head?
I know.
But anyway, we then flash back to Val and Fran, and Val's leaving, um, going out, I believe, out the kitchen door,
Mm-hmm.
side door,
I think
and she's
so.
like, "Fran, I really have to go." And Fran's like, "But Val, I have so many more things to tell you. You're my best friend. I need you." And then Maxwell walks in, Mick's fine. Uh, okay, side note, I had the closed captioning on, and when Maxwell comes in, it says that a Matthew is speaking. I'm sorry. I just thought that was amusing that instead
That
of
is
Maxwell, they
amusing.
put Matthew. But anyway, as soon as Maxwell appears, Fran's like, "Ciao," to Val and like shoves her out the door. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so again, Maxwell tells her that he wants to talk. Things have escalated. Um, and Fran's like, "Whoa, I just heard, relationship and escalate in the same sentence. Should I book a hall?"
Mm-hmm.
And and anyway, Maxwell talks about, I just wanted,
I
talk
discussed this
about
with
it.
Niles.
Yeah, he mentioned doing some type of stupid ploy to distract you. Did you fire him?
Mm-hmm.
um, but Maxwell keeps going, I told him I don't want to distract her. I say, let this relationship grow, let it blossom. She's a beautiful woman, warm, tender, caring. Oh my God, this room looks shabby as he's looking
Uh-huh.
around the kitchen.
Yup.
And Fran's like, huh? And Maxwell's maybe you should like redecorate. Me? Great, wonderful. I don't care how long it takes, uh, maybe like a year and a half.
Would be
And then
perfect.
like, yeah, would be perfect. And then so he leaves, and Fran, of course, is like, oh my God, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I have to question like why Maxwell would even say that Niles came up with a mentioned a ploy in the first place, because
Mm-hmm.
that would put you on alert. Anyway,
I mean,
people are making good
there
decisions
were
here.
so many questionable decisions made in these conversations.
Yes, yes, for sure. Is there anything you'd like to add to this opening scene?
No, you did a great job summarizing it.
Thank you. Would you take us um, to the kitchen?
Yeah. So Sylvia comes in and she is very excited that she's brought a pecan coffee cake surprise. And Fran's like, well, what's the surprise, Ma? You brought it all the way here and it arrived whole. And Sylvia's like, well, look at Miss Cocky Comedienne now that she's got a boyfriend. And Fran's like, oh, Ma, it's over. Mr. Sheffield doesn't want to deal with what happened. In fact, he gave me some stupid project just to distract me. And Sylvia's like, well, you just make him deal with it. She's like, Fran's like, how? By getting on my hands and knees and begging like some desperate, lonely loser? Although they say the third time's a charm. And then Fran's like, well, if he thinks that redecorating is going to change things, and Sylvia cuts her off, he's letting you redecorate. He wants your taste in his house. Which room? And Fran's like, I'll give you a hint. The one with the refrigerator. And Sylvia's like, oh, the bedroom. Which is, I mean, I don't know about you, but like she's sitting right next to the refrigerator. So
Hmm.
um
Yeah.
Fran's like, the kitchen. And Sylvia is totally not concerned about that at all. She's like, oi, the heart of the home, mazel tov, darling. He's moving your relationship to the next level. And Fran's like, but Ma, when am I going to get to the ultimate level with him already? And Sylvia's like, oh, you mean the wedding? And Fran's like, okay.
Clearly thinking of something else.
Exactly. Clearly thinking of something else. And then she sees that Sylvia is stuffing a spice rack into her purse. And Fran's like, what are you doing? And Sylvia's like, oh, this isn't going to go with your new motif. Oh, this is so exciting. You're going to have a ring on that finger before I can say, do you move refrigerators? And that last part she says into the phone because she's like picked up the phone and dialed because she's planning on taking the refrigerator with her too.
Hmm.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right. Would you like to take us to, I believe we're in the dining room for scene
Yes,
three.
so we're in the dining room, and in a kind of change of pace, Maggie is the one standing up, serving Niles, who's sitting where Fran usually sits, and
Hmm.
then both Maxwell and Brighton and also Gracie, they're all at the table already. So Maggie's serving Niles, and Maggie asks, so Niles, when did the doctor say you can start working again? And Niles is like, oh, who knows? It could be 4 weeks, 6 months, a year.
Hmm.
Um, Maxwell makes some type of comment.
Well, Maggie
Oh,
explains that.
sorry, it's
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that she didn't move to the dorm because she has a butler. That was
Correct.
part of the reason, because she, at this point, is in college, but still living at home. At this point, Fran comes in, and she has her arms full, and she says, "Hi," and then Maxwell and she's making her way across the dining room to the kitchen door, and
Hmm.
Maxwell's like, "Miss Fine, you shouldn't carry, something so heavy." Niles? And then Niles says, "Margaret." Maggie says, "Brighton." Brighton says, "Gracie." And Gracie goes, "Fran." And Fran's
Hmm.
like, "That's it." And then she goes into the kitchen where Sylvia is. Um, Again, it's this episode was a bit more difficult. I counted this as a continuation of the scene. Didn't know if you did as
I
well
did
or
too. I did too. So.
okay. Because again, Sylvia's in the kitchen. Um, you know, she makes some type of comment about being a pointer, not a schlepper.
Hmm.
Um, and then though, but I think Fran wants to kind of like prove herself. Um, but then at this point we learn that she has a cousin who just recently redecorated for the Kennedys.
The
Well,
entire Kennedy compound.
yes, but it's George Kennedy.
Right.
And again, they're talking about this whole idea of like using this redecoration process to prove what a great wife Fran would be. And again, is it Sylvia who brings up Martha Stewart, or is
Um,
it
so Fran says that she wants to show that I can be a real Martha Stewart.
okay? And then Sylvia's like her as a role model. You know, where is she? Divorced? Um, a wife? Like anyway.
Yeah, so then
Uh,
Fran says, well, Mr. Sheffield's wife decorated this entire house all by herself.
mhm.
And then Sylvia asks again, and where is she today? I rest my case.
Yeah. Yep. So again, we are at the point where okay, they are going to redecorate, and they've introduced this idea of the cousin. Um, so yeah, anything else you'd like to add to that scene?
Nope. Good job.
Okay. Can you take us to the next one?
Sure. So I think we're in the living room, and we're imminently awaiting Sheila's arrival. And so Fran's asking her mother, what, before I make a fool of myself, what did you tell her? That I own this house, that I'm married to Mr. Sheffield, and that I have a butler? And Sylvia's like, no, I told her you were a nanny. And Fran looks at her, what are you, stoned? And so they
Mhm.
like open the doorbell rings, they open the door, and in cousin Sheila, who gets a
Mhm.
round of applause because she's played by someone very famous, who we'll talk about
Mhm.
later. Um, and her immediate reaction is they hug each other. And Sheila's like, well, I hope you're not getting makeup on my Valentino original that I got from Bergdorf's. And Fran's like, no, I just smeared a little on your knockoff from Loman's. So, and then they start like getting into like some gossip a little bit. So Fran asks Sheila about her sister Claudine, and Sheila's like, she should only rot in hell. She never paid me back the $2,200 I loaned her to pay off her car, that low life piece of trash. And Fran's like, well, Sheila, why don't you talk to her? Sheila's like, oh, I'm too nice. And Fran's like,
Mhm.
well, meanwhile, I ran into cousin Meryl in Central Park and she was all over Naomi Dembo's husband. And Sheila's like, and you didn't call me? And Fran's like, oh, I don't like to gossip. So Sylvia then asks, Sheila, did your father ever come back from picking up a pack of smokes 20 years ago? Fran horrified says, Ma. And Sylvia's like, what? I'm not so nice and I like to gossip.
Mhm.
Um, so Fran So I think they migrate into the kitchen.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Fran's saying to Sheila that, I'm so sorry to hear that you and Mitch broke up. Why did he leave you? And Sheila's like, what? I couldn't leave him? Fran's like, all right, why did you leave him? And Sheila's like, I'm not gonna stay with somebody who dumps me. And
Yeah.
then she starts like pulling things out of her bag. And she's like, look, I brought you a sample of the wallpaper here. This is the motif I want to use in your new cucina. And so we see the wallpaper. It's this, I would say, somewhat dated uh,
Yes.
pink background. So
Mhm.
they're pink diamonds and then white diamonds, and the white diamonds are little oysters. And Fran's like, oysters, I don't know. Where have I seen this before? And she was like, Red Lobster. Well, you told me you
Mhm.
wanted to heat things up between you and Mr. Sheffield. And Fran's like, it's a vomitose pattern. And Sheila points out it's an aphrodisiac. So Fran grabs it. Does it come in fabric? Um, and then, Sheila looks sad. And Fran's like, what? And Sheila's like, just looking at this, it puts me in the mood. Then I start to miss Mitch. And she like gets all sad, and then she like points, clock. Yeah, yeah. I see a big clock right over the door with the accentuation of two giant pairs of antlers, a major aphrodisiac. Fran's like,
Mhm.
since when are antlers a major aphrodisiac? And Sheila's like, hello, horny.
Mhm.
Um,
And she, like, puts up her fingers as
yeah,
if
like
she has horns.
yeah, I'm doing it, but obviously no one can see it because it's an audio podcast, not a
Yes.
video one. Um, and then Sheila goes back to, oh God, I miss Mitch so much. Cabinets. And Fran's like,
Mhm.
what have you got? Decorator's Tourette's? And then Sheila's explaining to Franny, I really thought that Mitch was the one. When I met him right away, I wanted him to like me so much. I started making plans right away for a nose job, a boob job, liposuction. And Fran's like, well, it's a good thing you didn't get all that done. And then Sheila looks at her horrified, and Frank quickly adds, by a quack. Yeah, you look fabulous, honey. And Sheila's like, well, don't I? The thing is, Franny, I know he really loves me. Fran's like, oh, give him a chance. He'll come around. It's like me and Mr. Sheffield. As God is my witness, I have never pushed. And then there's like this awkward pause because we all know she's pushed, and she like looks up, hoping not to get struck by lightning. She doesn't. Um, I've never pushed. Yeah, right. Um,
Yeah, right?
and and so Fran tells him to just give him some time. And Sheila's like, time? Forget about it. We were friends for 4 years before we even went to second base. And right after that, he dumped me. Well, no, not right away. I mean, first he asked me to redecorate a room in his house. And Fran's
Mm,
like, oh my God. She's like,
yeah.
I can't feel my left side. My arm's gone numb. Mr. Sheffield asked me to decorate this room right after we got to second base. Oh, why doesn't he like me? And she's like awkwardly like massaging her arm, trying to shake it because it's gone numb. And Sheila's shaking her arm too. And
Mhm.
and Sheila's like, it's not your fault, honey. It's just the men in this damn culture. And Fran's like, well, why don't they appreciate confident, vital women? And Sheila's like, well, they do if she's 20. And Fran's like, well, what are women in our late 20s supposed to do? And if it's this difficult for us, what's it like for poor older women? How the hell are they going to find a man? At that precise moment, in walks Grandma Yetta from the side door. Congratulate me. I'm engaged. And she like
Mm,
shows what her hand in the engagement ring, and they're like, oh my gosh, that must be at least 3 carats. And Yetta's like, that's the small one. She puts her other hand in front of them. Take a look at this one Sammy got for me. See, that's why it's good to marry someone 89. He forgot he bought me this one. He forgot and he bought me this one. And
mhm.
they're like, you know, Yetta, Sammy's got incredible taste. And Yetta's like, wait, who's Sammy? The guy
Mhm.
you're engaged to. I'm engaged? I gotta tell the girls in the home. Hey, Esther, Polly, I'm getting, and she's like walking like towards the living room. I'm getting, and she like has this blank look on her face like she doesn't remember. And Sheila and Fran are like, married.
Mhm.
Yetta leaves. And Fran says, oh gosh, I'll tell you, Sheila, our 85-year-old grandmother's getting married before we are. What does she have that we don't? Without missing a beat, Sheila says, removable teeth.
Yeah.
And so Fran's like, I can't believe that Mr. Sheffield is dumping me. Look at this. She like takes one of the like teapots off the like shelf. This is his favorite little teapot. and she drops it. Whoops.
Yep.
And Sheila's like, well, Franny, I can't believe you just did that when this Lalique vase is, and she picks it up, is so much more expensive and drops it. Fran's like, yeah,
Mhm.
men, who needs them? Sheila's like, yeah. Her cell phone rings. Sheila races towards her phone screaming, Mitch!
Yeah. Mitch.
Yeah. Do you want to
Yeah.
do you want to add anything?
No, you did a great job.
Thank you. Would you like to take us to Niall's bedroom?
Yes, so Niles is again like exercising. This time he has roped in Brighton
Hmm.
to hold his ankles while he does the crunches. Um, and then Brighton's kind of like, oh, let's take a lunch or whatever. Brighton's like clearly not happy to be in this situation.
Hmm.
And he goes outside of Niles's bedroom and he runs into Maxwell. And he's kind of Brian is lamenting how he has to hold Niles' sweaty ankles and he wears really baggy shorts.
Hmm.
And Maxwell tries to remind him, well, he just had a heart attack. You should have a little more consideration. And, Brighton walks away. But then Gracie comes and she's holding a laundry basket and she goes, Daddy! And Maxwell's like, Gracie, now he knows. Because obviously he didn't want Niles to know that he was out in
Hmm.
the hallway. And of course, Niles comes to the door and asks for some more tea because his has grown lukewarm.
Hmm.
And Maxwell just seems kind of resigned.
Correct.
Poor Gracie. She's just been chastised for saying daddy.
Hmm. And in fairness, she did say it rather loudly.
Yes, she did. She did. Um, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, good job.
Thank you.
Sorry, you got the short scene and the short end of the stick this time.
No,
Um,
it's all
so we go back in scene 6. We go into the kitchen and Val and Fran are talking, and the kitchen looks very different, shall we say. Um, the normal wood table is gone. It's been replaced by I think it's a round glass table with these like very interesting looking chairs. They're plush and one's green. I think the other's pink. It it is not a good look, shall we
Mm-mm.
say. And so Val's trying to make Fran feel better, saying that, Mr. Sheffield's not going to dump you. You and Sheila do not lead parallel lives. And then she pauses a moment. She's like, does she still have that stupid best friend? And
Mhm.
Fran's like, oi, I am so getting dumped. And then Val's like, now, meanwhile, this room is stunning. But where's the aphrodisiac effect? I don't see it. In walks Cece. And we get like the camera cutting and we see different parts of the room. We see the horned clock. We see the antlers all over the place. And Cece's reaction is, oh my God. And then Niles walks in carrying his like workout bag. And Cece looks at him and says, that working out is paying off big time, mister. And he looks at her and says, pick you up at 8, wear something. And she cuts in Velcro. He's like, wow. And then he says, he looks at Val, Torello, looking good. He walks out. Fran's like, well, at least somebody's getting some use out of my new cucina. The phone
Mhm.
rings. She answers. Guess who's on the phone? It's cousin Sheila. And she says, hey, cuz, guess who's in the Caribbean getting bain de soleil? Oh, yes. Yes, Mitch. Because we see like she's getting like suntan oil or sunblock rubbed on her shoulders. Fran's like, Mitch. She got back together with Mitch. I'm going to get back together with Mr. Sheffield. And
Mhm.
Sheila explains, Franny, you're going to have to find yourself a new decorator because Mitch wants me to quit my job. And Fran's like, and I never have to work again. And Sheila's like, oh, I have to work. I just have to find a new career. Mitch said my taste nauseated him. Can you believe that's why he broke up with me? Well, we're together now and I've never been happier. And she gets cut off by Fran hanging up the phone. She turns to Val. Oh, Val. Oh my God. And then, like, as this is happening, these like moving guys, delivery guys, are bringing more stuff into the kitchen. And Fran stops him. You got to take this all out of here. And the guy's like, I can't. She's like, what do you mean? What's the matter with you? Are you? And he cuts her off. Mrs. Sheffield. She's like, a psychic, please God.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite exchanges in this entire episode. I'm just
Yes.
saying. Do you want to add anything?
I do not.
All right. Would you like to take us, uh, I guess, to the newly redone kitchen?
Yes. So we look at the newly redone kitchen, and thank goodness it's not in the same motif as before.
Correct.
Um, Now it is all, it's been a little bit, is it all like, is it green or blue?
It was green before, and now it's
Okay.
tan. It's like a
Tan.
peach tan color.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And it's
it's
all,
totally repainted. It looked clearly was done by a professional who knows what colors look good. Continue.
mhm, yeah. And so again, we're kind of unveiling it. Um, Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because there's Sylvia's there, right?
Mm-hmm. She's like
Is
drinking coffee and eating cake.
yeah, is she the one who says to Maxwell, "Welcome to the fine family"?
Yes. So Maxwell comes in and says, "Oh, Miss Fine, I have to say that I think the kitchen is now my favorite room in the house." That's when Sylvia says, "Welcome to the fine family."
Yeah, and then there's also then is it? Sorry again, my notes are
Yeah,
not the best for
I'm
this scene.
happy
Is
to
it?
I'm happy to
Yeah,
help however you need.
yes. I just have my next note is dinner or dessert.
So Maxwell says perhaps we should have dinner here from now on. And Fran like gets up and like pawing at him or dessert.
Hmm.
Um and
And
so meanwhile Sylvia has like picked up um her coffee and like backed out of the room.
yeah. And so now Maxwell and Fran are kind of like flirtatious with each other.
And what is Fran wearing?
Oh, I don't have that noted down.
Okay. She's in a bathrobe.
Oh, okay. And again, it's lovely. And Maxwell, do you do you in the living room or
Maybe
the
I
dining
should do
room?
you in the dining
The
room.
dining room. And of course, I mean, maybe you should do the dining room next.
Uh-huh.
And they're having kind of a moment, but of course, as they're having this moment, Sylvia comes in to grab something more because she has a half a cup of coffee.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. And wow, my next note is illegible.
Okay, I can take over if you want.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
so Sylvia leaves, and Fran's like, "Where were we?" And so Max was like, "Well, Miss Fine, about what happened in the hospital." And Fran's like, "Ah, save it, honey. You think I didn't know that you concocted this whole decorating scheme just to distract me? But you really didn't have to come up with such a ruse. Don't you think we're both above that?" And she
Mhm.
undoes the
The robe.
the robe, drops it, and we see she's in the vomitos pattern, oyster pattern
Pattern.
dress, but it's a short negligee.
Yes.
And what does he say to
Like,
her?
oh, Miss, very fine.
Correct.
And then, of course, as they're having this moment, Sylvia has to interrupt by walking through with like the whole thing of drapes, like
From the
even
dining
like
room.
broad. Yeah. Because of course that's not gonna go. It's not gonna fit with the new motif. So
Mm-hmm.
she's gonna take it. Um, so yeah, Sylvia, yeah, does a lot of interrupting in this, which is funny because again, she's one of the main cheerleaders for them to get together, and yet,
Mm-hmm. You
and
would
yet,
think she could put off her love of cake for like 10 minutes so that
mhm,
in the pursuit of grandchildren, like,
yeah,
just
yeah.
say,
And then we just have like for the little credit scene, we just have kind of a blooper of
yeah,
the scene where when Sheila first arrives and they're in the living room and it's Sheila, Fran, and Sylvia, and it's just we'll say it in a couple minutes who it is, but I think the actress says to Fran, "You have some lipstick on your teeth," and then Fran says to her, "Well, you've got some chocolate on yours," and they start laughing and like rubbing at their teeth
correct.
for the scene. And that's the episode.
Correct.
Do you have any kind of overarching thing you want to discuss before we jump into our shticks?
What do you make of Fran and Sheila living parallel lives?
Well, again, it's interesting in that, again, this is the first time we've ever met Sheila, right?
Correct.
I don't recall, has she ever in any of her little anecdotes about her family mentioned Sheila before?
I don't think so. But also, most of those anecdotes are like insert Jewish sounding name here, cousin, like
Mhm,
uncle, cousin, aunt, whoever, insert Jewish name here. And then like
mhm.
we never hear or see them again. The only like relatives we really hear about obviously are Morty, Sylvia, Yetta, uh, maybe Nadine, but usually not. That's the
Yeah,
sister. Um, Maybe Nettie, her dad's mom, but like even she's not in a lot of anecdotes. And then like Uncle Stanley and cousin Cookie or Aunt Cookie, I should say.
and you
Those.
already said Frida. Frida,
Oh, thank
right?
you. Yes, Frida. How could I forget
Frida has
Frida? We
come up
actually see her.
more. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't we've had this a couple of times where, like, Fran is compared to someone else, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's her doppelganger from that episode
Fran
earlier
Light. That was
series.
the first episode of season 2.
Yeah. Um, or, I don't know, we've had some kind of parallels before. Again, I mean, in general, it's not as if Sheila was also a nanny, you know?
True.
She was a decorator. Again, the only kind of similarities we really see are the 4 years of friendship first, and then as
Hmm.
soon as there's some progress, there's this hiccup. But again, we learn that the reason why Mitch left Sheila was because of her decorating, how it nauseated him.
Hmm.
So again, if not for there's whole redecorating thing now, and if not for her catching on to that before, I mean, the reasoning behind any breakdown in the relationship seems very different between the two, right?
Hmm.
Uh, there's other considerations because, again, Maxwell does have children. To our knowledge, Mitch doesn't.
I mean, it would be hard for Mitch to, whisk Sheila away to the Caribbean on the drop of a hat if he did.
Yeah, unless he's a deadbeat dad, which I
Well,
guess is a
true.
possibility. But again, it's not a one to one comparison,
No,
right?
no, it's not.
So again, um, I can see where like Fran's kind of overthinking everything, and that's where she, sees it. But I wouldn't say there's an actual correlation. What about you?
I think it's so interesting that Fran just like jumps to that conclusion immediately that they live parallel lives, and then like Val is like, "Oh, that's stupid." Does she still have that dumb best friend?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, "Oh, just another parallel."
Yeah. Yep. But again, I feel like we've had parallels before, or similarities, right? Similarities, but it
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean parallel.
Yeah, so like I like your example of Fran Light, because like Leslie and Fran were very similar, but it wasn't this like X happens to you, it's going to happen to me too. I don't know. It's just
Mhm.
it struck me as interesting. Is there
Yeah.
anything you want to talk about before we get into our shticks?
Again, I already kind of touched on it a little bit, just like the decision-making processes in this episode were questionable by like everybody.
Agreed.
Um, but yeah, and then I would just say, what was your opinion of the newly remodeled kitchen?
It's nice. I mean, the final product is nice. The interim product was distasteful, to put it
Mm,
nicely.
yeah.
Um, I'm okay with it, but also I know like all the things that are going to happen in it. So, what do you think of it?
It's fine, but I actually kind of prefer the old one.
I understand. Change is hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Change is hard.
So, but I'm very glad they did not go with the interim one because that
Hmm.
was atrocious.
Agreed.
Again, have to question even if it's a supposed aphrodisiac. I still That's a family room. That's
Hmm.
like if you're gonna go that route and you set aside your personal taste for the effects it has, that would be more of a bedroom choice, I would think,
That
not
would
the
also
kitchen.
look terrible in a bedroom. Let's be fair.
Oh yeah, no, it would not look good
Anywhere.
anywhere. But if the only reason, because at first she kind of also Fran acknowledges like, ugh, but as soon as she hears it's an aphrodisiac, that's when she kind of changes her mind or lets her go for it, right?
Right.
But even in that scenario, like I don't think the kitchen is the place to do that.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm. No,
so
I agree. I agree. It was a poor choice all around.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep, and again, I already mentioned, it's like, why would first of all Niles plant that like that idea into Maxwell's head, and then why would Maxwell mention that to Fran? Because
Right.
that's confirming what is happening.
Right.
Not a
Agreed.
smart decision.
No,
But yeah,
I mean, Niles should have just been like, you could just tell the woman you love her, admit you love her and marry her. And just like, you should have shut up at that point.
yeah, yep. So yeah, okay. Anything else you want to discuss?
I don't think so. Favorite fashion?
Okay. So again, definitely not the necklace.
No,
Neck-
no.
Again, no.
Yeah,
Just no.
yeah. I mean, it's a cute cut in a different pattern.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
not also not appropriate to wear around children,
Mhm.
like many of her outfits.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, the only two other items I wanted to note, I guess there are three. I like what Sheila is wearing in the last scene we see her when she's like at the Caribbean. It's like a sweetheart black and white top with a black like cover up and a hat. I think that's very
Mhm.
cute.
Yeah.
That's I think the only piece of fashion in this episode I liked.
Yeah.
Um, I did not care for what Sheila wore when she was at the Sheffield home. It's um, like a blue gray, blue silver jacket with like a dark navy blouse and then or dress and skirt. I don't know. But then she has this huge hat with all these feathers, and it's
Mhm.
just so audacious
Mhm.
that I'm just like not a fan. And I also
Well,
did not
she
like
redecorated for the Kennedys.
yeah, George Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like meh. um and then I also didn't like what Fran was wearing at that in that scene either. It looks like it's a snakeskin print, but it's like rainbowfied.
Mhm.
I don't know. I didn't care for it.
Yeah.
How about you? Did you have any favorite or not so favorite fashion this week?
Mm. Yeah, not really. Like you said, I mean, I already said I was not a fan of the negligee. So I guess if I had to choose a favorite, it's the robe.
Yes,
That's
yes.
comfy.
It did look
But
nice and comfy. And I feel like we don't see as many robes as we used to.
yeah, agreed. It used to be more of a staple, I would say.
Exactly.
So yeah, anything else you want to talk about fashion?
No.
Okay, let's jump into notable New Yorkers. And you can tell us who is cousin Sheila? Or you want to
Roseanne
wait?
Barr. Sorry.
Yeah.
I totally like blanked for a second. I was like, I know who she is.
Put you on the spot because I jumped ahead.
It's
Yeah, it was
fine.
Rosie Barr,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Like I wouldn't have like I immediately recognized her, but I wouldn't have expected her to be like her cousin,
But it worked, didn't it?
I guess.
So, for those who do not know, Roseanne Barr was a is a actress, comedian, producer, writer. She started her career in stand-up comedy, but she's best known for her television sitcom Roseanne, which aired from 1988 to 1997. Um, she then got herself into some hot water in more recent
Hmm.
years.
Yes,
She
and that's true.
also ran for president at one point.
Oh, huh.
I can't remember which. Yeah, so she ran unsuccessfully, sought the Green Party's nomination in 2012. That's all of this is according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, and
yeah.
sorry, I'm going to just throw out because I'm reading further, and I quote: later nominated by the left-wing Peace and Freedom Party, Barr received nearly 70,000 votes for president in the 2012 election.
Huh.
So anyway,
Yeah. I was trying to see. I was trying to see if she has any kind of Jewish. It says she
she
studied Kabbalah.
she was born in a Jewish family. Yeah.
Yeah, and so so she plays cousin Sheila. And what's interesting again is they made the choice. I think part of the reason why her wardrobe's like that is because that seems very opposite of what her character Roseanne would wear, right? It's like very much distinguishing the two, I
Oh,
would say.
absolutely. I mean, on the television show Roseanne, she played like for those who are not aware of that show, it's a working class family, and so she wears a lot of like plaids and like jeans and
Mhm.
things like that. Here
Yeah.
she comes in wearing what she's claiming is a Bergdorf original,
Yeah. So I think
Valentino
that was
original from Bergdorf's.
yes, that I think was part of like the strategy in this is to make her character very different from her character in her own television show.
Right.
But yeah, so generally speaking, I know we're gonna get into some, but like overall, I don't feel there was as many. I could be wrong. Um,
There weren't as many.
in the first scene, I guess I don't know if you put Demerol
I
on your
did.
list. Okay,
It's a strong opioid according to our friends at drugs.com.
which might be why Maxwell felt his head reeling.
I it's that's sort of funny. Um because it's so much more romantic to hear than him say that his head was reeling and than to hear that he, got a shot of Demerol.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, but he didn't even notice, so he can always attribute it to the romance.
Correct, correct. And I think Fran would never correct that uh
Mhm.
misunderstanding for him.
Yes. Did you put Reese's down or
Uh
Reese's?
I should have. It's a chocolate peanut butter candy.
Yep. Yep. Let's see here. Again, I didn't see any in the second. Well, yeah, I didn't really see anything.
The next one I have is the Kennedy compound.
Yeah,
So the
because
Kennedy
it was not
compound
really.
is a property owned by the Kennedy family with 3 houses on 6 acres in Cape Cod. It's according to our friends at
Mhm.
Wikipedia. On the other hand, George Kennedy was an American actor who appeared in over 100 films and television shows. That's according to our friends also at Wikipedia.
Mhm. I think we've had Martha Stewart before,
We
right?
have, we have
Mhm. So
um,
yeah.
Valentino. We've also had
Mhm.
Bergdorf's and Lohman's. We've also had. Um,
Mhm.
the next one I had is Red Lobster.
Mhm.
It's a chain of seafood restaurants that dates back to 1968. That's according to our friends at redlobster.com.
Mhm.
And then
Now,
go ahead.
did you put down Tourette's or
I was going
anything?
to say
Or
that's the last one I have.
okay.
It's a nervous system condition that causes people to suffer sudden movements or sounds repeatedly. That's according to our friends at cdc.gov.
Mhm. Well, I guess Lalique, is that an actual?
So Lalique was the name of a character on Dynasty, which we knew from the episode where Fran dated her cousin.
Okay, so when she says this Lalique vase, it was probably just something that was reminiscent of that character?
Oh, I take it back. It is a type of crystal vase, apparent. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's a type of crystal, apparently.
Okay. So a name drop
It's
there.
yeah, according to crystalclassics.com, Lalique glass is lead based. Um, and then it talks about how it has favored motifs, including dancing nymphs, dragonflies, fish, and foliage.
Gotcha.
And yes, they are very expensive.
Mm.
Just from a Google search, they range from over $1,000 to so about $950 to over $6,000.
Wow. Yeah.
So pricey.
They never did show what the follow-up to, him discovering that his Lalique vase was broken
Or
by
his favorite
accident.
teapot.
Yep. Yeah, and it seems like I understand Fran was, like, insecure because, I mean, she had reason to. We know that Maxwell was trying to pump the brakes, but she also, to some extent, like, went ahead of herself by saying, like, during that time when she's breaking the teapot and the Lilique vase,
Right.
because at that point, there was no confirmation that he was actually, like, breaking up with her or something, right?
Correct.
So, yeah. Okay. You said that that's it for you, right?
That's all I had.
Okay. Yiddish cop.
All right. So I'm going to start by pointing out oysters are not kosher because they're sea creatures that don't have fins or scales. So yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Mazel tov, we've heard before, it means congratulations, or as Fran put it in season one, that's pip pip in Yiddish. Um, Forest Hills is a Jewish neighborhood in Queens. Schmear, that's the past tense of schmear, so basically to spread on. Um, Sylvia says to Fran, I raised you to be a pointer, not a schlepper. A schlepper is one who schleps or drags things about. And then finally, Sheila makes the comment when Fran asks what does Yetta have that they don't, and Sheila's like removable teeth, which is one of those comments that you wouldn't understand as a child. Um,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's a reference to oral sex for those who
Hmm.
are not aware,
Hmm.
which traditionally was considered forbidden under halakha because it was wasted sperm. In the modern Orthodox community, there are some rabbis who say that any sort of sexual behavior that occurs within the confines of a marriage is fine. But there are others that are like, oh no, that's spilling seed, that's bad, can't do that. Shame, shame. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
So
all I had.
then, awesome. Yeah. 90s nostalgia.
I'll let you start.
Okay. She had her cell phone, which was not like our smartphones today.
Correct. Um, the old home phone too, the
Hmm.
the wireless. Um,
Yeah. And then I think to some extent it's made a comeback in some aspects, but still the whole like wallpaper thing seems more dated than today. Like I said, I think I have seen some people incorporating some wallpaper again, but usually it's like an accent wall or it's not like every room.
mhm,
Uh, But yeah, it used to be wallpaper all over the place.
correct. Also, that pattern looked very nice to me.
Hmm. And like you mentioned too, like the color,
Yeah,
the type of color was seemed dated as well.
it did. Old cars.
Hmm. Um, Niles's exercise bike.
Uh-huh. And then I'm out.
Yeah. There again, we were pretty much confined into the home this episode.
Hmm. Except for the tiny scene where we see Sheila um
Yeah, yeah.
in the Caribbean.
Yes. Unfortunately, did they? I
I
don't think
think
they
they
did.
did. I have my
Did
note. I have a note that at the end they
wait,
kissed.
where? When?
Like in the last true scene after Fran takes off her bathrobe, or were they just nuzzling?
Yeah, like I thought Sylvia had because I didn't write it down because I thought Sylvia interrupted it like they were about to. I'd have to get a replay.
Oh
But you
goodness.
wrote I'll trust you
I
if you
put
put
plus one.
there.
I mean, it's also possible. It's also possible. I'm just like, come on, guys, like hurry up.
Yeah, I'll trust you on this. If you want to add to the
I
kiss count.
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
So then we're up to, I believe, 26.
Hmm.
Woohoo!
Now, Cece and Niles flirted.
They did not kiss.
They did not kiss. And there was actually no like direct mention of the thing.
Correct.
Now they have a new situation they're in the
Uh-huh.
aftermath of.
Yep.
So that brings us to future fun.
All right. So I have three, five things. So let's see. Starting with Niles and Cece, we are going to see more of them being attracted to each other as this season and next season go on. So stay tuned. Um, Later in season 5, individuals who will remain unnamed begin measuring Maxwell's bedroom for a refrigerator. To Sylvia's point that the room with the refrigerator is the bedroom. Um, oh, I actually I have a more specific note about Niles and Cece that this is not the only time they're attracted to each other. For example, in season 6, Fran brings home a case of cookies from a Chinese herbalist that leads to Niles and Cece very openly flirting.
Mm.
Um, so as we know, Maggie is now at Columbia. While she's there, she ends up developing a crush on one of her professors, who ends up trying to date two other women in Maggie's life. Not Maggie, so that's good. And finally, unsurprisingly, Fran and Maxwell's relationship continues to move slowly. They're going to go from they're going to go on a disastrous first date next week, and then weeks later they will go on a second date, but that doesn't go any better. In fact, I would even argue that their second date was worse than their first date. So, yeah,
Yeah,
one step forward, two steps back, friends.
that's the classic rom-com, the nanny way of going.
Correct. Correct. That's all I got.
Okay. So then we are at the episode rating portion of our episode. As a reminder to our lovely listeners, we rate each episode from 1 to 5 lipsticks, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. We always reserve the right to adjust our ratings at a later date and time. Again, this is just for fun. And
Correct.
everybody's going to have a different opinion. So
Correct.
I believe, Debbie, you rated the last episode first. So
Oh,
I
thank
suppose
goodness.
I go first this time.
I love it when this
Uh,
happens.
yes. So again, we pointed out kind of like the poor decision making, um, all of that in this, but it was fine. I mean, there was flirtation at the end. Uh, I don't know. For now, I think I'm just gonna go with a 4. How about you?
Yeah, so this was a lot more fun to talk about. Um, I enjoyed the episode, but yeah, there are these like weird decisions being made. Maxwell's being a baby, which I don't like. Um, Sheila has terrible taste in decorations, in decor, I should say. But it is funny. It is fun to watch. Is it the best episode in the series? No. Is it the best episode in the season? No. There is significantly there are better episodes coming. There are also worse episodes coming. Ah, I think I might also just give it a 4 and
Oh,
just say I'm done with it.
yeah. It's a pretty solid kind of score, so.
Yeah, I mean it was fun to watch. It's funny. I don't approve of Maxwell being a baby.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah. Yep, and like you said, it's kind of hard because this is the first episode of the season, so I do expect there to be better episodes down the line.
I mean, I will say to start the season, I liked this episode way better than the start of the last season. If you recall, at the
Mhm,
end of season 3, Maxwell told Fran he loved her and then took it back in the first episode of season 4. And I was just like,
mm,
no, 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 I do not approve of this. And so I
mhm,
ranked it lowly. So I like this
mhm,
episode way better than that one.
mhm.
But anyway,
Yeah,
the
okay.
points are made up and don't matter. So
Yeah, exactly.
so it's all
Yeah,
fine.
so yeah,
Um,
feel free to let us know your thoughts on this episode as well.
yes, lovely listeners. Thank you. All right. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I do not.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited the nanny. Join us next time when we'll be discussing episode 103, First Date.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us an email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.